Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. Our mission is to see a world well led. And our strategy to get there? To empower leaders like you to lead every day. So let's get to work.
Welcome to the Lead Every Day show. I'm Randy Gravitt.
And I'm Mark Miller.
And we are dropping this content on a Friday, ending season 6 here, Mark, as we've been answering questions from our listeners, and they have just had some fantastic. I think we've been 18 questions now that we've received, and we're trying to answer stuff as best we can. We had more questions. We'll get to them later, and I think we're sending out an email today letting people submit even more questions that they have. I love the real life stuff that's happening out there on the field. But we got a great question today. I hope you had a little time with family yesterday on the 4th of July.
Yes.
It was good. It's all good. It's a Friday, getting ready for the weekend. We got new content coming next week, a new season we're going to start, which will be fun. We'll tell you about that on Monday for all you listeners. Do want to remind you, we have a YouTube channel. If you've not checked us out there, you can do that. And I've talked to a lot of people that are watching it with their team and having, show 6 or 8 minutes. They'll have a conversation off of it. It's fun, which is good. So however you do that, however you use the content, we want to encourage you to keep downloading, sharing with your friends and family, help us here grow the channel. We're grateful for that. But so here's the I said yesterday, I'm feeling pain with people who are struggling on some of these questions. I can really feel that. This one especially. How do you manage someone who brings a lot to the team professionally, but brings a level of toxicity due to holding on their past too much? We'll just say they bring a lot to the team professionally, but they're toxic when it comes to personally. And we all know it's like this can be devastating, but we need talented people. I mean, it's obviously, and yet if we're not careful, we'll just take anybody and who's talented, but they may not have the character piece. I know what you're going to say here. I'm kind of in your camp. This to me is the diva wide receiver. It's I'm not sure you can win with a person who's toxic.
Yeah.
You got thoughts here?
Well, yeah, I mean, we could probably take the lessons or our response from the headlines. Most of those teams give those players a second season, and often they don't make it through the second season, right? I mean, it's like it's just not going to work.
And we don't. I mean, all these teams we see them though, they think they can.
Well, and they want it to work.
We'll fix them.
They want it to work
because they're so talented.
And then they pollute the locker room.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
they definitely do.
And it's not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to try to figure out what's going on. I mean, what is really going on? Requires some of that empathy that you have encouraged and challenged us all to raise our game.
Encourage myself
on empathy. And I tell you, I've had an example where we actually changed somebody's role. Took them off of a leadership team and gave them an individual contributor role because their behavior was not conducive to the team, but we could still find a way for them to contribute to the larger organization. So it's not necessarily play them or trade them. This is where we probably deviate from the sports example, but I felt like I've done that once or twice.
Where they were misaligned.
We put them somewhere where they could be more contained.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have seen it when it was just a role problem and we've moved someone to a different role and they actually were able to flourish.
Yeah. So I'm going to take just a little bit different view on it based on a conversation I had with a woman who was on my team at one point, who had worked been a big time executive in another organization, came and was working in ours. And she told me this story about a guy that they were having their executive team was having a meeting year after year. They have these annual meetings. They'd evaluate their teams and their employees and, we're going to move forward. And she said, I'm sitting at this meeting table, boardroom table, and there's 5 or 6, men at this table, and she's the only woman in the room. And she said somebody's name comes up that's on one of their teams, and she's, the leader of the team says, "What do you think we should do?" It's a toxic situation. It's a bad attitude. And my friend says, you need to fire him. And they're like, well, how do you say that? How do you, I mean, they've got a list of things, but they're like, should we give them another chance? And here's what she said she did. This is so cool. She said, I flipped back into my notebook that I had with me from our team meetings through the years. And I had literally last year's notes, and I pulled it open and I opened it up and I read bullet point by bullet point, the same exact 5 things we had written on the board or on the flip chart. And she said, nothing's changed in a year. We said a year ago the same thing, and it's just like, this is going on. And it reminded me of something I heard. I don't know who I heard say this first, but somebody told me one time, if you're going to cut off my arm, don't start with my hand. Meaning, we think we're going to fix it, we're going to fix it, and we just keep chopping, and it just gets bloodier and bloodier and messier and messier. And this toxicity part is the part that scares me. Now, can you put them in another department and contain them? That's still, that worries me a little bit. If they're at the point we need to contain them, do we even need them on our team? And I'm not, you need to do what you need to do out there in question land. But the reality is, if you've got somebody who's toxic, I don't care how good they are at their skills. We say all the time, if your heart's not right, nobody gives a rip about your skills. And so
Sure.
This character part is a big piece. It's a big piece to us. I mean,
Yeah.
You would get to decide if you're leading a company, how much of this can you take for that? You have to have talented people to do what you're trying to do. So, but I always like to start with that piece first. And if I have somebody that's really, rocking the boat over and over again, personally, I'm gonna go ahead and try to remove them from the situation.
Yeah, and I got that. I think in the scenario I described, I felt like we had the option because parts of the organization were team-based and parts were not.
Okay, that's good.
And so
You put them in
this was a person that did not and was very vocal about not wanting to be on a team. You've met individual contributors
Yeah, that's great.
that are lone wolves. I don't want to be part of a team. I don't want to join your community. I don't want to know about your lives. I want to do my work. So we found a place in the organization
For them
that was
to do what they did,
that,
and
that's what they do.
Then I'm sure they were happy,
And
at
they
that
were
point.
happy,
And y'all
and
were, everybody's happy.
It all worked. So
Yeah.
so that a little bit more
that's
context.
Right. Yeah, that's
But
right.
if you're totally team based and you have non-team players, you
Yeah.
got a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Then you got the wide receiver
Yeah,
situation. They're
Yeah.
not team players.
yeah. We've all seen them storm off the field in the middle of a season or a game or whatever, and we could bring to mind some people.
But it's
So
a hard situation, and it requires
is.
some courage
it
on the part of
does.
the leader.
That's right.
And the woman you shared her
Reference, yeah.
story, she was
Yep.
bringing the courage
That's right.
to the table.
I will say this, for the leader who's listening who has a situation like that, to me, I always thought it's my responsibility to protect the team as well. And so if we removed somebody from our team, would everybody be a lot happier tomorrow? If the answer to that is yes, maybe we don't need to remove them today, but we certainly need to ask ourselves why we're letting this happen, because that team dynamic gets messed up. And as a coach, if you're the coach of the team or the leader of the department or whatever, it's your job to ensure alignment.
Well, and here's the other thing that leaders don't either, they don't think about it or well, I was going to say they don't know it or they don't want to think about it, is let's just play through that scenario. You've got somebody on your team that's toxic and you don't move to either terminate or to relocate or to do
Or
something.
whatever. Correct. Yeah.
It's undermining your leadership.
Yeah, you lose your credibility.
And your team is going, you're either a coward or you're clueless or some combination.
yeah. Or you're just enabling this dysfunction.
I mean, I actually had a leader approach me not long ago and said they had one of the senior leaders on their team that was dishonest. And they had confronted him and they were still dishonest. And they said, what should I do? And I said, well, what do you think is going to serve this person best over time? Like if you help them get this, because they were relatively young, and maybe learn some painful lessons here. They said, well, I'm really not sure what to do. And I said, well, do other people in your organization know that this person is not honest? And they said, yes. And I said, you don't have many choices, because now it's your credibility.
Mhm.
People are asking, like, what's up with our leader that they won't deal with this? So that's another thing to throw into the mix as you determine what do I do with this toxic
Well,
person.
I want to say, we have talked about empathy a couple times. I want to say there's a difference in empathy and enabling. And I want to make sure that you don't hear me say that empathy is not this person. I feel bad about letting this person go. That's not empathy. That's just not what that is. It's if you understand what's going on with somebody, you cannot, and they're really toxic. You cannot enable that because you do lose your credibility as you're talking about it. And I think that's a dangerous place for a leader to live. So, if you've got some people that are not on board, you need to figure out why and go talk to them and have some of those conversations and do what you can to make sure.
So let me close. I know our time's short here, but I want to end with a more optimistic and tactical note here.
Love it.
I had a leader one time who I was at the point of terminating, and I may have told this story before, and I literally put on a sheet of paper the 4 bullet points for their core responsibilities, sat down with them, said, how's it going? They said, pretty good. And so I slid this across the table, and I did not even say a word. And this leader looked at it and said, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And I said, yes. And they said, I'm not doing any of this. And I said, I know.
Right.
And they said, well, I can do this. And we actually had a turnaround on our hands.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, who was that on? That was on me.
Yeah.
Had I said those things? Certainly. Had I tried to reinforce those things? Certainly. But something about putting them in writing in bullet points clicked with this leader.
Yeah, that's good.
And that person went on to be a rock star.
And they weren't toxic. They didn't have a bad
No,
heart.
they weren't toxic.
They were just clueless.
They appeared to be incompetent.
Yeah.
And what it was is
but it was you hadn't done.
But
what you needed.
I'll say apply this. I had a leader one time who was struggling, and we put some things in writing, and it helped.
Yeah.
Because it gave it a level of clarity.
Love
and
that.
his behavior changed.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, this is really clear and specific. Now I know these behaviors are out of bounds, because that's what we told him.
Yeah.
And he got better.
That's good. I love calling it out. I think that's great. I don't think you can go to a good place with bad people. If you've got people on your team that they're just not aligned, they're toxic, you've got to eliminate that. But if you've got people on your team that just aren't clear on stuff, let's do what we can to make sure that we create the clarity they need to go to a better place. All right, it's been a good season, Mark. Season 6 in the books here. We're coming out hot on Monday with Season 7. Looking forward to hanging out with you. Looking forward to hanging out with you guys. Remember, the best leaders lead every day.